Yes. We have come to the end of the questioning of David Veness at the Undercover Policing Inquiry. For the majority of the day, he has answered nearly every question with "I don't recall," after making an initial announcement that his memory had been destroyed from his time in the United Nations. I don't think there was since the last video there was a very small number of further questions. I don't think anything particularly came to light from them, especially. I'm joined by Emily Apple and Kate Wilson, both regulars, who need little introduction. Overall, what have you made of the day?
Overall, I mean, we finished early, but I'm exhausted because it was exceptionally dull. You know, the repetition of this guy's. It wasn't just that he can't remember; he can't help. He doesn't want to help. He can't help. He doesn't remember. He doesn't want to remember. Nevertheless, because I think people probably get that impression from your tone of voice when you started talking, it was just like it was clearly a dull one. But yeah, there have been some interesting points. I mean, I talked earlier about the Reaper point, but I really do think, I mean, you know, Dave Morris is not here, so I think we should say we have just had another apology about something that they had not apologized for before, and I think it's a big one. They're apologizing for, well, I say they, ex-Assistant Commissioner of Special Operations David Veness apologized for failing to apply Reaper properly to the STS when it came in. They then expanded on that just before the break, which you may also have talked about because I'm afraid I didn't watch your video. Yeah, they expanded on that by looking at, okay, we have the SDS, it's been in place since 1968. It's an old unit. It plays to its own rule book. We've had many months, years in fact, of hearing about SDS exceptionalism, the shit to non-existent training that they got, the feedback loops where they were trained by the people who'd committed misconduct before them. And then he said, well, but you know, what about the MPOIU? And the MPOIU received the national accredited training. Pretty much its entire existence was under Reaper. Reaper had been passed, I think, but not actually enacted when they first started. Certainly the Human Rights Act had been passed. All of that comes into force very early on in the history of the MPOIU. And he agreed with all of this. And then Barr said, so, but it all went wrong anyway. You know, they used dead children's identities. They had deceitful relationships. They misled the courts, all of the stuff that we've been hearing about for 40 years from the SDS. You know, why? What went wrong? I have to say, David Veness was not very forthcoming about what went wrong, but Barr put a series of possibilities to him about what the reasons for that could be, and that it came down to a messed up culture within the police force and a lack of any moral compass. David Veness did say more when he was asked what could have been done about that, and
yeah, but he didn't. Like when he was first asked about it, he kind of listed all the things that the MPOU supposedly did as the things that the SDS could have done. Yeah. I'm not sure he had anything. Do you have anything extra?
Well, he just said selection. He said you needed better people.
Yeah, I mean, he blamed the staff, essentially. He was like, well, it was a moral failing of individuals who were selected. And that, I mean, essentially, I mean, the only thing I think the problem was they were recruiting police officers to do this job.
Yes.
And by the very definition.
Interestingly, I actually heard someone from MI6 say in a public talk.
I mean, this is the core of the problem. But I mean, it was very telling that despite the fact that he was on the steering committee of the MPOIU, he had oversight of the SDS for a decade at that point, that he wasn't in any sense responsibility of senior managers in any way for things that had gone wrong. It was purely down to the very, floor level staff.
Well, I mean, there was something else that I thought he said was interesting about this, because he accepted that he had been in charge of the MPOIU, but he said, but that was after 9/11, and that became my obsession. session, and he pretty much said, I didn't care about this spying on political groups because, my focus was elsewhere. And, which possibly is a more appropriate place for the focus of the Assistant Commissioner for Special Operations covering counter-terror to be on. But what it means is that, again, you've got this political spying going on with no oversight whatsoever.
But again, I think it's that point about culture that, as you said, they were police officers. That's so important because that's still the culture today. It hasn't gone anywhere. And I know, I bang on about this all the time, but it's this political policing that we're still seeing today. And that is the culture. And, the SDS wasn't a rogue unit. The MPOU wasn't a rogue unit. It's the very foundations of policing and the way political movements are policed.
I mean, I don't know if people saw the. It's tangentially related to the inquiry. There was this woman who went into a police station to present a petition. She was arrested, and she had a body camera on, which was taken off her when she was arrested, but it was left on for 4 hours, and the police didn't realise, and they returned it to her. And the police force are, I think it's Norwich police are currently stumbling through a series of embarrassed apologies about the culture of their officers, the racism, the misogyny, the inappropriate and unlawful things that they were talking about.
I mean, the video has been shared very widely on social media. If you've stumbled across us on social media, you'll have almost certainly stumbled across that. It is very shocking. I mean, it feels like at first you're like, is this real? Because it's so extreme. But yeah, I mean, if people haven't seen it, I'd recommend checking it out. It will infuriate.
But what I think was really key, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen it. We had the Charing Cross WhatsApp groups as well. But it really starkly contrasts with officer after officer over decades claiming that they never once saw sexism and they never once saw racism. And it's like, okay, there's two options here. One, you're lying. Or two, you are so deeply racist and misogynist that you don't recognize that there's anything wrong with this kind of behavior. Because it's, every time we get that fly on the wall access, it's there. I mean, nobody has ever come away from something like that and said, I was so struck by the evidence of professionalism on the webcam that it's just not a thing.
No. I mean, it is always appalling, and it just seems. I mean, like you say, it speaks so much because they often come out with lines like, "Well, it can't be misogynistic because there was women present." Or
it can't be misogynistic because I locked a woman in a room.
That was literally one.
And the other one was, it wasn't misogynistic because there weren't any women present, I think was the other one that came out with.
I mean, there's they reveal themselves with their reasoning for why it was okay. It just shows a complete lack of understanding.
So that was another interesting thing that came up today, and again, probably has already come up in the videos, but was HM123's partner writing a letter to AXO David Veness, which he unhelpfully claims to A, not remember, and B, not to believe he ever received.
But his staff didn't brief him, but he doesn't blame them.
He doesn't
know who they were.
No, he can't remember who any of his staff were. I mean, I'm sure that is something that the Metropolitan Police could look up.
Yes. I'm always struck by the words of John Grieve in these matters. The paperwork will exist.
Yeah. Although we got quite a lot of that as well. There's the standard SDS manager line, which is, show me the paper that proves that I had anything to do with this, and then I'll answer your questions. If you haven't got the paper, then I don't remember.
As well as I don't recall today, we had a lot of, well, on the face of it, well, that's what it says here, which is something which so many of the officers have
and
done.
There was a lot. I mean, he really went so far as to dispute the accuracy of quite a lot of things. There was quite an amusing moment around the whole MPOIU bit at the end where, David Barr listed the abuses committed by the MPOIU, and Veness said, I don't think that's accurate. And I heard that and was a bit like, and I was just starting to type an email with a Rule 10 question to go back on it, and but somebody else got it in, and he came back Barr came back at the end and said, "You said you didn't think that was accurate. Is that what you meant?" And he took it back and said, "No, I was saying I think that was accurate."
I mean, I think he got so used to giving negatives.
Exactly.
You know, it was just knee-jerk, hair trigger.
He said a lot of, "I don't believe that's accurate, and I don't think you've proved it enough to force me to accept that is accurate."
I mean, he also, the other thing he did, like, very willfully a few times when Barr was questioning him, was refusing to accept the premise of Barr's questions and the hypotheticals, and was just like, "Well, I don't understand that." And it was so clear, and it was so willful of just like, "I'm not even going to entertain this possibility to answer this question in a hypothetical."
Which, you know, if he genuinely had no memory, then you would expect a level of more humility in accepting what was written down at the time.
Absolutely.
And it just wasn't there.
And also, you know, if for his apology at the beginning to mean anything as well, like substantial, I mean, it was very good in terms of the Ripper stuff, but to show any credibility behind that apology, to actually engage with the process, engage with those hypotheticals of what should have happened and stuff like that, and he just refused.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was very frustrating, that kind of, and it just showed that sort of that layered thing of like, first it's like, I don't know, I don't remember anything, but like, I also refute, and like, they definitely, whatever you suggested, right, I won't be drawn on any hypotheticals. I mean, the whole section where he basically said that the witness statements of Peter Francis and HM123 would not have been read by anybody. It wouldn't have been possible for anybody to have read it or respond to it, rather than getting involved in hypotheticals of something should be done about it.
But also, he was literally shown documents showing that the Gold Group, including Janet Williams, who will be up tomorrow being questioned about this, was specifically responding to the possible threat of that witness statement and the allegations made in it becoming more public and being circulated more widely. And even then, he refused to accept the premise that the Gold Group... The question was, had the Gold Group read this witness statement, should they have told you? And he said, "Well, I don't accept the premise that they'd read it."
Yeah.
You know, that was his answer.
Yeah, it was absolutely ludicrous. Yeah, I mean, he has been a very frustrating witness for the day. Because of the way he's been answering questions, I think it was very easy for a lot of people maybe to lose sight of quite how senior this man is, quite how much responsibility he had, quite how much knowledge that would have been delivered to him, how much he would have been briefed on. I think it's, you know, it really needs to underline that, you know, it is not credible that he doesn't remember anything about anything. And
even if he doesn't remember it, he did know.
Right, yes, absolutely. There's no two ways about it. He blatantly knew. And I think the bloke we just talked about, the way that he like refused to get involved in hypotheticals, shows really that like he knew full well he's guilty as hell, and he was aware of the worst of it, and is just trying to find a way to absolve himself in some way. I think that's probably why we did that witness. There are other matters at hand with the inquiry. Do you want to talk about them?
Well, yes. So I think we have already mentioned here, and certainly hopefully we've started to talk about the fact that this phase of the inquiry finishes this week. On Thursday will be the last witness, and the future of the inquiry is in jeopardy. The Home Office has called a, quote, public consultation into the future of the inquiry, and there seem to be very strong indications that they want to curtail it, remove some of its powers, or even shut the whole thing down. I mean, I think the end of Barr's questioning was really powerful on that, because what we're not going to look at if it gets shut down is that point that they started to touch on at the end, which is, okay, the SDS had 40 years of mission creep and going down a very, very bad dark rabbit hole. In 2000, we brought in regulations. Everything was supposed to get better. The MPOIU gets set up and it all goes wrong again. And it all goes wrong again incredibly quickly. Despite different ways of monitoring, despite much closer and more intrusive supervision of the officers, despite nationally accredited training, despite, you know, authorization and at a higher independent legalistic, I can't remember all the words that David Veness used, it all still goes wrong. All of the abuses continue to happen. The political policing and intrusion and disruption of social movements continues to happen. And for anything to come of this inquiry, there needs to be a look at why all of those changes didn't stop it all going wrong.
And I think really importantly as well with continuing with the inquiry, is there are, there are the issues that we knew at the start of this, but there are so many issues that we didn't know until we got disclosure. And it's actually been the core participants who can bring those issues out. Because the police aren't going to admit to them and the inquiry doesn't understand them until we've seen that disclosure. And we don't, we know, for example, of some miscarriages of justice in Tranche 4, but we don't know the scale of it. And disclosure will give us the scale of that. Having a full statutory inquiry will give us a full scale of that. And things like the disruption of our movements, the disruption of political organising that should be such a key part of the functioning of our supposed democracy that was undermined. There are so many issues that need to come out in Tranche 4 that will not happen either if the inquiry is shut down altogether or if it is limited in scope in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, to give some examples of stuff that has come out in Tranche 3, just Tranche 3, because that's my memory. Further than that, there's a lot, but just in Tranche 3, you've got the discovery by Donna McLean that Carlo Soracchi was submitting a rent book and claiming significant, 4 times more rent on his expenses than he was paying to her, which is embezzlement, and that not only that, but that his managers were colluding, they were forging her signature. I mean, there's, all of that came through disclosure of documents to the right people who would see. Otherwise, that would just look like a routine expenses claim. And it's not until you show it to the relevant people who were there at the time that they're like, well, no, that's a really big deal. Other examples, the whole of Operation Lime, and the
huge.
people who were being completely set up for gun crimes. None of that would have come out. Those people would still be unaware. I mean, there's so many examples of this, and there's so many people who have discovered that, there were police plots to disrupt. I mean, the Mayday 2000 Operation Endeavour, was it called? The plot against, or Operation Apache.
Maybe whatever it was,
the plot against Reclaim the Streets, targeting the printers to stop the flyers getting printed, listing names, including people who weren't involved in organising for general harassment, in order to be able to target and undermine the organisers without letting on how much information they really had. I mean, there's so much stuff that if we hadn't had the disclosure, and then the other thing that I think is really important, and I mean this, as somebody who has actually already had a lot of the documentary disclosure from the MPOIU, is throughout the entire IPT claim, we did not hear from a single witness from the police. Nobody was questioned. Nobody had to give answers. The IPT in their ruling say, this is really weird. We're having to make a ruling on things that people know the answers to. And we take comfort from the fact that, we're guessing because we have no other option, because we have no witnesses. But the undercover policing inquiry is going to investigate this. And we take comfort from that. And now it looks like the Home Office is going to take away that comfort and that it may actually not happen.
I think there's a lot of people who are quite concerned about how long this process has taken, how expensive it's been. But I think what was really key to get across to people is that the reason it's taken so long is because of the actions of the police And the reason it's been so expensive is because, the nature of inquiries for one, but then secondly, it's the long drawn out process of disclosure. And really, when we look at that kind of the future costs of the inquiry, should it continue, the only area that they can really make a saving, because so much of the costs are already baked in, is in that disclosure. And actually, if they were to try and do it for cheaper, what that would in essence mean was less disclosure, because it's the redaction process which takes all the time and the money.
Yep.
And if they can say, oh, well, we're going to save some money, we're going to cut the thing out, which we're able to cut out, it'll be that they cut out. And I think for everybody involved, and I think to any onlooker as well, it's the disclosure which is the most important part.
Yep.
So when they talk about saving money, they're talking about cutting away the most important part of the entire process.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would say that, for example, if it was down to me to cost savings, I would be like, well, don't write the final report, because actually I don't give a shit about the final report. What I care about is the process and the actual disclosure.
Well, I mean, if it was down to me, I would say, don't have 9 different state agencies looking at every single document in order to decide which bits need to be redacted and which bits the public cannot be trusted to know.
Yes.
They could do the disclosure exercise without the elevated costs.
Yes.
But what it would require is more trust in the population and less of a rigorous redactions process. That is very unlikely to be where they decide to make the costs. It's interesting that the Home Office has made a statement in which they talk all about the victims and all about justice and how this, but actually, where they're not going to give an inch is on state redactions and state security, whereas when it comes to us, they will just slash it all, I have no doubt.
And I think it's really important to add to that conversation on disclosure that we've got core participants who've been core participants since 2015 who haven't had any disclosure
a single
yet.
Page of disclosure or any answer.
People have waited such a long time for this disclosure and to finally get some answers and to be able to ask those questions about the MPOU. The whole thing is a traumatic process for everyone involved. And when you're on the cusp of getting that next bit of disclosure, to then have this threat over it is just incredibly damaging.
And it's extremely traumatic for people who have been waiting for 13 years for answers about some of the, people who found out in 2010. But it's the ones that we know. Like I know from my disclosure in tranche 3 that there were undercover officers who wrote reports on me who I don't remember in the slightest. So I know the ones that I knew in tranche 4, but there could be others and other reports that I've got no idea about whatsoever. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the same for everyone. They should just give us, like we've been saying all along, give us our registry, give us the files.
And I think it's worth saying about tranche 4 that we've been hearing from officers who we will hear from again in tranche 4 who have been given a different cipher number. We have seen witness statements where most of it is temporarily redacted because it's not going to be revealed. This material is already there, but they're not showing it to us yet because they have siloed it into tranche 4. And at this stage in the chronological approach of the inquiry, that is completely absurd because it's information about stuff that was happening at the same time, in parallel, at the same events. So we've only really seen part of the picture about the last 8 years of the SDS. They were working in tandem with the MPOIU and they were working in very much the same areas. And without that full picture, it's very, very hard for any kind of recommendations or conclusions to be drawn.
And that's been a problem all along because for a lot of us in tranche 3, we've been asked questions where we haven't had full disclosure because we also know that there are MPO unit officers present or things that haven't been investigated properly, like the Fairford coach kidnapping, because it's been pushed into tranche 4. And there is so much overlap.
But it's not all doom and gloom because we are going to be responding to this.
Yes.
We've written to the Home Office asking them to withdraw their consultation We've had what is probably an automated reply.
That's how they talk.
Yeah. So we're waiting to hear this week to see if they do reply, if they do withdraw the consultation, if they do agree to meet with us, and if they don't, then we will be calling on you and everybody to publicly support us in campaigning for this inquiry to continue.
I think part of the way they have the confidence to launch this consultation and float the idea of winding up the inquiry is due to a lack of public pressure generally and a lack of political pressure. I mean, unsurprisingly, you will find very few members of parliament who have a concern about this. Those who have generally because they were spied on themselves at one point in the dim and distant past. The political pressure that does exist around this is coming purely from us as co-participants, and for the most part we've all been a bit too busy to actually mobilize around the issue too much, because unsurprisingly, as you know, it's not just the fact there's a lack of journalists following the proceedings, there's also a lack of a lot of the other things around it which would make it easier. So in reality, a lot of the co-participants are spending a lot of their time engaging with the inquiry in some very nuts and bolts kind of ways. Regular watchers will be aware of the Rule 10 process where further questions are put in. It's co-participants who are doing a lot of that work, and in fact a lot of that kind of happens before that point, so that the actual questions that are being asked by counsel to the inquiry, I mean, they come from the police side as well, so I mean there's lots of different ways in, but what it generally means in those of us who are most engaged are not necessarily doing the sort of campaign work that kind of got us in this mess in the first place, if you like, which you think we would be able to do, but I never chose to do any sort of journalism in my life. I've just ended up in this kind of role because the lack of anybody else doing it. So I mean, when it comes to mobilizing around it, we will need help, hopefully the consultation will be withdrawn, but I think it's looking increasingly likely it won't be, in which case we will be doing our very best to mobilize as many people as possible, and any help with that would be very gratefully received.
And it's really important to say that the closing date for the consultation is currently the 20th of August.
Insane.
Right in the middle of the summer holidays. Most people are going to be out at festivals or camping or sitting on a beach somewhere, not wanting to think about this, but it is going to be really important to have that support over the next 3 or 4 weeks, so that we can really make a point to the Home Office before they close the consultation. I mean, I think it's absolutely outrageous and probably illegal that they run the consultation while Parliament is not sitting and close it on the 20th of August. So I would hope that somebody in the Home Office is going to see sense and at the very, very least move the end date of the consultation to a sensible time when people can actually lobby and deal with it, but they may well not. And we need to be primed to fight back over the summer for this.
I mean, just quickly on that, during that time, I will be speaking at a number of festivals. So if you're coming to Green Gathering or Boomtown or Shambhala, there will be a talk by me about this, and there's others doing talks at the festivals I know about. So we will be doing things to mobilise over the summer. Come along if you're at any of those events.
Great.
It's an early finish today, but it still feels like a long day because they always do. Thanks to everybody. I don't think there's any sensible comments there. Is there? No, unsurprisingly not. Thanks to everybody who has liked and shared as ever. And we will be back again tomorrow with Janet Williams, the former head of Special Branch, who we've heard so much about.
I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I think it could be an interesting day.
I mean, for some reason, we don't have that many female witnesses at the inquiry from the police side. It's quite unusual. I'm struggling.
Who was the last?
I mean, there was one of the family liaison officers to the Lawrence family,
and Sandra, the first female SDS from in 2020.
But like Lee Bosner, failed to turn up when she was meant to appear.
Christine Green hasn't shown up.
Right, exactly. I mean, there has been a complete lack generally of female representatives of the SDS in any way. So Janet Williams is a rare one of those. And for some weird reason in my head, I feel she's less likely to say I don't recall at every opportunity. Perhaps she'll prove me wrong and we'll do exactly that. But, we live in hope that perhaps she will give real answers.
Yes,
Who knows?
Yes. I share that sense.
Yes. But we've been very wrong before.
We've been very wrong before, indeed.
So, I don't believe it's an early start tomorrow.
No, it's a late start tomorrow.
Yes,
the hearings are not starting until 11 a.m. So the YouTube feed, if you're following that way, will be at 11:15. and Tom's break videos and everything else will all be messed up in around that. I imagine.
Completely messed up, I should imagine. There is a fear, of course, that because it will be a shorter day, and if she is giving proper answers, then we might not get through that much stuff. There's a lot for her to answer questions on. So,
and we may also finish late.
Yeah, I'm almost certainly will be late finish tomorrow. All right, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all again.